Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. The U.S. is poised to tighten its chip restrictions on China once more. In one of his final acts as president, Joe Biden is set to announce new curbs on the export of advanced chips to China, particularly those used in AI. The U.S. will expand the scope of its manufacturing process controls from the current 7-nanometer advanced node to the 16-nanometer mature node. This move will pose significant challenges for foundries like TSMC as they face increased difficulties securing mainland China orders. Let's analyze the potential impact on TSMC. Joining us today are Jonah Cheng, founder and CIO of JJ Investment, and Rocky L. Wu, SciTech Power Research CEO. A warm welcome to both of you on the show. As reported by Investing.com, U.S. President Joe Biden will issue new regulations for semiconductors. These rules aim to restrict the flow of AI chips to certain countries assisting China in developing AI capabilities. Moreover, the regulations seek to prevent foundries like TSMC and Samsung from manufacturing AI chips for Chinese companies. So let's start with my first question. My first question will be first directed to Jonah. How do you assess these new regulations impact on TSMC?
There are two parts of this. One is talking about AI, and actually there will be another part of the ban that will be in the ADAS chip for the automotive market. So if we talk about the AI market, right now people saying the U.S. government may prohibit NVIDIA to selling the chip not only to China but also to some other country, like to Singapore or to Southeast Asia or even to Middle East. So maybe some like the total amount they can sell to this country. So if that happens, right now we can see there are around roughly 35 to 40% of NVIDIA revenue selling to these countries. So if that really happens, then of course that will be some negative impact to TSMC. We estimate NVIDIA roughly 20% of TSMC revenue this year. So combine this number, that will be 4 to 5% impact to TSMC revenue. And if we including other chip like ADAS chip we just mentioned to China market, company like Li Xiang, like Xiaopeng, they will not be able to produce their own ADAS chip going forward. That will be another like 3-5% revenue impact to TSMC as well. And if they expand the ban even into some ASIC chip, like for example, like the Bitcoin mining chip from Bitmain, and that will be another 5% plus revenue impact to TSMC. So definitely this time the impact is not very small, and that will also tighten the relationship for the geopolitical issues. So we think that may be a big risk for the near-term investment. Yeah.
So indeed, based on the percentage you talk about, it definitely will greatly impact TSMC. And Rocky, what do you think the new ban will affect the Chinese semiconductor industry?
Okay, I totally agree to Mr. Zheng's opinion. But the story to mainland China is totally different because the development of advanced AI chips for China is very important. And if you need AI chips, you need 7-nanometer, 5-nanometer, even 3 nanometers. But currently, the local manufacturers like SMIC, they can only produce 7-nanometer chips and with a very limited amount, limited capacity. So that's a hurt to their, as you mentioned, autonomous vehicle industry. So I believe they have to enhance their development of AI chips in the future, but definitely they will be more costly and they need to put into more effort. So we have to observe again.
So talking about this new ban, we understand that now the U.S. is trying to concentrate the AI chips production on friendly countries only, meaning like-minded countries, then we can manufacture the AI chips, and then if you're not one of us, then better not. How will this impact the overall AI trend? Maybe we start with Rocky.
I believe there will be some kind of tension or raising up internationally, but the tension between China and the United States will be higher, I think, because from standpoint of the United States, they want to enhance, to keep their advantage, the superior position of the AI chips development. But at the same time, they want to suppress China to catch up. So they have to do the two things at the same time. And do you know the reason why? Because military demand. That's actually the most key factor. Because if you do have the AI chips, then you know how to do unmanned weapons. You can decrease the casualties of your personnel, right? The soldier's life is very precious. And you do have a lot of weapons which will be more precise and the killing ratio, even though I don't like the term, but the killing ratio will be more precise, more higher. So that's actually the key point of these two great powers, that why they compete so much on the AI field. They can improve their military power. And after all, military power is actually the great powers, national power, the great element of national power.
So Rocky talked about the killing ratio and the use for military purposes.
I'm sorry to use this term,
yes.
but...
We certainly understand. Well, what about you, Jonah? Do you think that this ban will really exacerbate the already tense situation in the global stage?
Indeed, that will impact the relationship for these two countries. However, I think right now, if you see the recent article from some China companies, or even from the product release from OpenAI and Google, computing power is important, but actually it's not that important these days, because you can see people are talking about building a new LLM model based on not talking about the bigger parameters anymore. They are talking about using a small model and give you the maybe better quality information, and you can train the LLM with cheaper cost and still deliver similar performance and a similar response. So right now it's very amazing, like DeepSeek V3 from just recently announced. Actually, they reduced the training cost a lot. Of course, if you're using the method they use to develop with the better computing power using the most advanced chip, maybe the model performance will be even greater. However, like we mentioned, from the OpenAI product release these days, people are not talking about a bigger parameter model. They are more like using small model and we tuning the model into a better one. And sometimes maybe computing for China, maybe the company's computing power is not as big as American company, but they can still deliver something maybe good enough, especially for military use. And also, just like Rocky just mentioned, for SMIC, their capacity is limited. But if we talk about AI, actually the chip number is not quite huge. Even we talk about NVIDIA, last year they only produced like 3 million unit chips globally, versus smartphone more than 200 million, a PC more than 150. So that's a small volume. So even the capacity not very big, still maybe good enough for their internal uses. But if we expanded the band to ADAS, then of course that will have bigger impact, because auto market is much bigger than the HPC market today. Yeah.
Definitely China, facing this kind of ban, will try to find a way to propose their own countermeasures. So under this kind of pressure, some Chinese companies are thinking about expanding their presence, maybe setting up companies in the United States or Southeast Asia to circumvent the U.S. ban. So what will be the outlook for the semiconductor industry for China? Maybe we start with Rocky.
So when we're talking about the semiconductor industry, we are talking about the supply chain. And within the supply chain, we're talking about probably more than tens of thousands of companies, probably more. And before the U.S. imposed so much sanctions on China, China can also enjoy the benefit of the global supply chain before. But after those sanctions occurred, China has to build up their own supply chain within its own territory, and that's pretty tough. It's a difficult job for them to do that, but they have no choice. They have to do that. So according to my understanding, the Chinese government and some leading companies like Huawei has done this already. They started from 2020, I think, based on my understanding. They started to build up their own supply chain within China. So after 5 years, during the past 5 years, I observed some of the breakthroughs have been done by Chinese companies like Huawei, I just mentioned, and some other companies or from colleges. So probably in the future, I believe the supply chain within China, or we call it the red supply chain within China, probably will pick up little by little. But it won't be that soon, that fast. It's not an easy job. So I would say probably in the next 10 years, we will still see a very competing situation between China and in the United States, like in this way, what we're looking at right now.
So, Jonah, do you agree that maybe we still see in the next 10 years the red supply chain will try to compete with the, supply chains that Taiwan has? And also, do you think that what will be the countries that can benefit from this kind of new ban imposed by the U.S. government?
I would say, like in China, they're developing the semiconductor process by themselves, and right now the situation is they already make the mature process. I would say ready to go mass production by themselves with the whole China local supply chain. So if we talk about 28 nanometer and above, today I think only DUV machine and maybe some photoresist materials still under development. They still need to rely on ASML and a Japanese supplier, but most of the other equipment and the materials they can do locally. So of course they cannot do leading edge process yet, like 7 nanometer and beyond. But for 28 and above, they can do a local supply chain quite well. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, supposedly they can make the 7 nanometer process also the same situation, all made in China. They still cannot do 5 and to 3 because they don't have EUV. We don't know when they will have a big breakthrough for that kind of process, but good enough for that. For 10 nanometer, that's already good enough for some HPC and for some ADAS. Unless you're trying to do the mobile device with very limited power consumption, you need to use 3 or 2 and beyond. Otherwise, maybe the chip is not very efficient, but they can have connection for many different chips, and they can make a big part to deliver similar performance. Especially if we talk about some similar situation like Huawei. Huawei actually is very good for networking. So connecting the different chip with the superior networking infrastructure can also deliver the better computing power. We can see some comparison between NVIDIA GPU and also the Google TPU. Google TPU alone actually is not very good compared with NVIDIA product, but Google networking technology actually is the best among the U.S. company, even better than Amazon, better than Microsoft, and etc. So the Google using TPU to train their own Gemini model, and the performance is similar level to OpenAI GPT-4 and the GPT-01, or even better. So in China, we will find similar situation. Huawei is very good for networking, and even their computing power is not good enough. Maybe they can catch up through something else. So I would say in the end, of course, there's still some gap between U.S. and China, but they will find some other way to catch up. And for Taiwan, we already choose our side. So we just focus on the U.S. supply chain, and unfortunately, we cannot do the China business very much in the future. So hopefully, the Western power can still deliver better performance to show their advantage. Otherwise, if the China supply chain catch up, then of course that will be a big impact to Taiwan. And also under the recent ban to Middle East country or to Southeast Asia, that will be a push power for them to using China technology. They cannot get enough computing power from US, from NVIDIA, then that will be a power incidental. Okay, maybe they will think about using Huawei product or using like Tencent product or like Baidu product. So actually, I don't think that will be a very good move for U.S. government because not good for their partners. Yeah.
It seems Mr. Cheng is pretty optimistic to China's improvement. Actually, part of agree with that, but talking about the tensions between these two great powers now, that Trump is going to be on position after he gets the power. I think his staff, he has a lot of smart subordinates. Now they will give him recommendations how to restrict China's improvement in AI or in semiconductor field more, and. That's the reason why during the past 4 years, the Biden administration has issued more and more new restrictions on China. That's the reason why wherever they found a loophole, is there any missing link there, they will issue the new sanctions. So when we are looking at China's progress, we need to also keep observing the other side, U.S., how they're going to issue more restrictions. So that's a related way to struggle with each other.
You talk about a series of restrictions issued by the U.S. government. For example, by the end of last year, the Biden administration invoked the Section 301 investigation into China's semiconductor industry, hoping that China will not go through the unfair competition and non-market means to promote the semiconductor industry. Do you think that after Trump takes office very shortly, do you think that there will be harsher measures against China?
I think he will, and very likely he will. He will do that.
Like what?
Okay, like what? I'm going to tell you later. The reason why I like to say the first thing is why Biden would like to issue something even before he steps down very soon now, because he wants to do something, and almost everything that he can do. Then after Trump takes the power, then Trump has no other tricks to do. Then it will make Trump look weaker. Now what? See, I do everything. You don't have any efficient way to do that. But what can do after the 301 report? If the 301 report, the result of the report is positive, say, okay, it's an unfair trade from China. What they can do? The only thing they can do is to add on, to lift the tariff. That's the only thing. But you can tell that even without 301 report, Trump,
he loves the word tariff, right?
He can raise the tariff every day. Now, every morning he can say, well, I'll raise 10% of this, 20% of this. Not only China, but also to Canada, to Mexico, to any European partners. So 301 report is not the key factor. They can raise the tariffs by any reason, any time, any moment. To any country. So 301 report is not important. So I think Trump will figure out some more new ways to put on tariffs, to limit the tariffs, but they won't depend on the 301 report. I even doubt that 301 report will keep on going because after they change all the staffs or the officials from the commercial department, probably they will put it away. They just keep on lifting the tariffs.
Jonah, what about you? What's your projection for the Trump administration?
Okay, if you talk about the 301 report, I would say it's more focused on the mature process node. And for mature process node, that's using in some consumer electronic product. So it's very difficult to actually, you want to charge tariff for this chip. That will be very difficult because, for example, nowadays, if U.S. import a toy, and within some chips inside. And some chip may be from US, from TI and XP for the microcontroller. But maybe they're using a few chips, like an analog chip from China, using mature technology. And they say that will be unfair. But how you ask a toy vendor to give you a detailed bond about which kind of chip is produced by China? And sometimes for this kind of low-end chip, maybe they even don't have any mark on the chip side, and they say, okay, maybe the package in Southeast Asia. How can you know where the code, the die is produced in China or not in China? So in reality, actually, it's a very difficult thing to do. But of course, they can say we do some investigation. For some politics reason, they can say I am very strong and I trying to punish China. But in reality, it's not a very easy thing for them to do.
Yeah. Rocky.
Regarding the legacy or mature chips now, yes, I agree. It's very difficult to assess, to find out how many chips inside of those, as you mentioned, toys, machines, refrigerators, whatever. But I consult my friend. I have some insight from my friends from the United States. They say probably the government will figure out a way you have to report by yourself. You got to be honest. Then we will sample. By sampling, if everything's right, as you report, there were only 2 Chinese-made chips inside, and that's okay. But whenever we inspect, we found out something you are not honest, and we'll give you a very heavy fine. So I guess that's what I heard, and I cannot prove it. But it's very difficult. But it doesn't mean there's no way to do that. So the legacy or mature chips will be another focus we need to observe now.
So we talked about China, we talked about the U.S. Now let's switch gear to Japan. Japanese semiconductor manufacturer Rapidus is on track to begin trial production of 2-nanometer chips at its wafer fab in Chitose, Hokkaido in April. They aim to provide samples to Broadcom in June and achieve mass production in 2027. If successful, they could indirectly gain customers like Meta and Alphabet, posing a potential threat to TSMC. So last November, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang suggested that his company might want to diversify the risk and they may outsource the production to Rapidus to mitigate the supply chain risk. How formidable is Rapidus as a competitor to TSMC? Jonah?
I don't really think Rapidus can compete. And I think it's very difficult to anyone else globally to compete against TSMC. And I would say 5 years ago, we still have Intel, Samsung to compete against TSMC. But right now, even Intel, Samsung cannot compete. For Japan, I would say the only big semiconductor company left is Renesas. And Renesas already gave up the leading edge process development for, I would say, more than a decade. So if you already gave up the leading edge process development, so this will be very difficult for them to catch up again, and especially for N2. So I don't even think how many engineers they can find in Japan, especially in Hokkaido. So how many senior engineers still left in Japan? I think they cannot find enough talent to do that. That's my opinion. So I don't really think Rapidus is a threat to TSMC at all.
So you talk about the technology, you talk about talent. What about you? What's your opinion, Rafi?
Mr. Cheng, I agree with you. He represents one part of the Taiwanese opinion, but sometimes I say that myself, I represent the other side. I think we should be wary about the Rapidus competition to TSMC in the future, not right now. Right now, I think they are still far behind the technology, still far behind TSMC, because 1 year ago, last year, I paid a visit to Hokkaido, I paid a visit to Tokyo, I interviewed several important Japanese officials and scholars and engineers from the field. What I feel is from top to the down level, they really try to recover their last century's glory. The revival plan is very strong. So I think the enthusiasm for them to revival the semiconductor from last century is very strong. So I have to be very careful. We call it Rapidus. I also went over to Rapidus to check how they improved the construction on schedule. So that's pretty difficult because during the past almost 30 years, Japanese semiconductor companies, they haven't built any new fabs. So I think that's very, we have to be careful. That's my conclusion. You have to be careful. They will be a strong competitor in the future.
Of course, for us, we are very happy to see that TSMC is doing very well. Yeah. But looking ahead, over the past few years, we do see that TSMC has opened up plants in the U.S. and also Kumamoto, Japan, and also last year in Germany. How do you see the future overseas deployment of TSMC, and how will that affect the overall operation?
I think for global expansion, I think they will still focus on U.S. And for Germany and for Japan, that's focused on mature process. And like we just mentioned earlier, globally mature process is oversupply right now. So that's why TSMC actually didn't talk much about expanding the second fab in Japan these days. So I don't think they need to do that aggressively in the near term. Unless they change their mind, they will expand into 7nm or beyond to some leading edge process in other countries. Then that's maybe they may have this kind of need to reduce the geopolitical risk in Taiwan. So that's one thing. But for mature process, I don't think they need to expand in Japan or Germany very aggressively right now. But of course, in U.S., that's a government issue. The Trump government definitely asked TSMC to build more fab in U.S. So I think that's some protection fee we need to pay. So that's a separate situation.
Well, Trump has, during his campaign, said several times Taiwan has stolen the United States semiconductor industry. Do you think that Trump will ask TSMC to further expand its presence in the United States?
Based on my research, I think TSMC has promised the United States government, the Biden's government, they're going to move 20% of the production capacity under the 10 nanometers to the United States. But of course, the speed is not enough. It's not fast enough to their satisfactory. But I think even though they push more, there's still a lot of conditions won't be able to satisfy. So probably that's what it is right now. But I think if I can make up some other things, when TSMC is moving to other countries like Germany, Japan, or even the subsidiary Vanguard Semiconductors company in Singapore, they're also going to build a 12-inch fab, right? So we can foresee that TSMC is going to expand their production in the next 5 years globally. So I think they're going to meet the challenge of talents, probably not enough. And to manage those employees from all over the world with different background, different culture will be a challenge to TSMC also. And also, TSMC in Taiwan, they have privilege. If they want anything from the government will always give them a green light. So it's easy for them to develop, expand their capacity in Taiwan to build new fabs. But in other countries, like in Germany, you're going to meet unions. In U.S., the same thing. You're going to meet those employees. Very difficult to manage it. So I think TSMC also needs to adapt new managed method to try to manage all these different backgrounds employees well. So, but I do have confidence that TSMC will overcome all these challenges in the future. But that's what we're going to focus on observing for the next 5 years now.
So my final question, what does the future hold for TSMC? How many years can it still maintain its leading edge globally?
I think the only challenge for TSMC is from the government side. We don't need to worry about competition, in my view, at least for next 5 years. We don't need to worry Japan Rapidus, like from China, because they cannot go outside. And as some people mentioned about India or Vietnam, we don't need to worry about that. They can only do mature process. And Intel, it looks like they cannot compete anymore. So we don't see anyone else can compete. But geopolitics risk, that's the major challenge for TSMC.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insights. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world, charted by the freest country in Asia.
Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
Taiwan Plus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.